Are you ready to explore the exciting tech world like never before? Welcome to Better You, the podcast where we dissect the latest in business, technology, and startup trends, all with a keen focus on growth. So buckle up and get ready to stay ahead of the curve. Let's make you a better you.
Folks, welcome to another exciting episode of Better You. So this is actually a very special episode for me because I have this amazing friend on this episode. Her name is Aida. I am actually trying to get time from her for the last 4 months, but she's a very busy lawyer and she handles a lot of immigration cases. I know she's a badass lawyer. So I said, Aida, why don't you come to my podcast and let's do an episode where we can talk about various challenges in immigration. And I think I'm keep hearing this word from Aida itself, Einstein visa, which I really want to know. What is Einstein visa? And then as the 2025 is coming, I'm sure Mr. Trump is going to do something magical. I don't know, in a good way or bad way. I would love to hear Aida's personal opinion that in what direction we're going. So Aida, welcome. And so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right. So Aida, first I want to understand, how did you start as a lawyer?
Well, it was a pretty roundabout way, honestly, but I originally went to fine arts school and worked in photography and some journalism. And then I decided that I really wanted to do something to help people and impact people. And I decided to go to law school. And I'm sure that was a really exciting day for my parents when I told them I was going to go to law school, as immigrant parents. I went to Loyola Law School and it was a great experience. And now I practice here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. As a woman, you're going to your parents, hey, dad, mom, I'm going to be an artist. And I also have a daughter. And when she said, hey, dad, I'm going to be an artist, I'm like, Jasmine, let me explain you the plan A and plan B. So now she is sticking with B, which is computer science.
Yeah. As soon as my dad eventually was like on board and accepted it and was into it, then I was like, now I'm going to switch. So
nice.
I pulled that move on them.
How long did it take to do the transition?
Not a long time. It just took the LSATs. I think one thing, though, it was different is, you just work such a different side of your brain when you're doing something creative like art and then you go into law school. So it's a little bit of a transition, just kind of relearning how to study in a different way and how the classroom structure was. But it was a great experience. I actually really enjoyed law school.
Nice. All right, let's switch gears. So tell me more about immigration.
Well, so my area of expertise is really in employment-based immigration, sort of the corporate immigration, as you call it. And what I like to do is help founders, emerging companies, venture-backed companies with their immigration, hiring needs, planning, as well as the personal immigration for the starting team. So we do a lot of work visas, such as the H-1Bs and the TNs and E3s, O-1s. And then we also help with green cards as well. What do you want to know?
So when you say so you own a law firm, and so you are a hardcore entrepreneur and a very successful lawyer in LA. There are two things which I want to know. I want to understand the founder side. So let's say I own a company. I have an amazing, talented human being outside of US. Now I want to bring these human beings into US. What are the different ways, creative ways, legal and creative ways I can bring these folks and start building my team, my startup team? That's one part. Second part, which I do want to know, which maybe the second part of this episode, as the layoff happens, all these big companies, they're kicking people out. And, as you are living that life where you are helping so many immigrants, what are your suggestions of what these people who are getting out of these big companies, what should they seek out? Because most of my friends, what they're saying, man, you know what? I'm just going to leave the country. I'm going to go back to India and I'm going to do something else there. So Aida, let's start with the challenges in immigration. And then as we talk about it, let's talk about the Einstein visa too.
Okay, sure. So depending on who I'm advising, I think the approach is a little different. When I'm working with companies, if they're startups, they have a different need than a more established publicly traded company or just a larger corporation where they're really trying to streamline and create processes and have policies for their visas. But with startups, it's fun because you can be creative, but also it is a little bit of a roller coaster ride because you're dependent on their funding. The funding dries up. A lot of times the co-founders need visas. And so those are challenging to do technical co-founder visas. I think they're really fun, but you have to get creative. One of the biggest things I think when working with startups and with the founders is to really press on them. I really try to make sure they understand that their security, especially if they're foreign founders, it's very important if they're trying to raise money from VCs and investors. Like VCs are going to want to know what is the security of, VP of engineering or our CTO being able to stay here for several years. You're trying to raise a Series B, Series C, but if you're at risk of getting deported or having a visa denial, like it's a big risk. So I think the first thing to do is to secure the visas for the founding team. If there are members of the founding engineering team that require a sponsorship, as well as the C-level. And then from there, helping them come up with a strategy for hiring engineers. Different startups have different approaches to it, but a lot of times it's hard to bring someone from outside if you haven't worked with them before. So what usually happens is they'll be here on student visas, on the F1 visa, then they'll work with the company on an OPT. It's sort of like the dating phase, I think about it. And then they decide, let's get engaged. We'll throw you into the H-1B visa lottery. And then if they really like you, then green card sponsorship comes from there. But it's a really significant cost. Companies do subject themselves to additional reporting requirements. So it's not something to be taken lightly, but it is something that gives a lot of startups a competitive edge against the larger companies, especially because they could be more nimble.
Yeah.
On the other side, like when I work with the larger companies, they're more streamlined. I have to focus less on proving that the company is this legitimate entity and whatnot. But we also have more administrative hurdles and bureaucracy within the actual organization, not even talking about USCIS, but just being more flexible about the job titles and what their requirements are, having to be fair. You can't discriminate against US workers. So larger companies are subject to additional employment laws and regulations. So it's more predictable, but I find it's less creative sometimes.
I see. I still remember I was working with this startup, not me, I was working with one of the founders, and they had a co-founder from Eastern Europe. So they had to, I think, raise some funds, and they had to show some capital in the bank. And then within a year or so, they were able to get a green card for this individual for the Series B or C round. But that was very interesting. And I'm sure you're following this. I'm just going to say it. It's funny what Trump said. He recently said that if you are willing to invest more than $1 billion, you're most welcome to US and start your business. So either I want to switch gears without going into politics. Second, no legal advice, because I do want to put this disclaimer. Whatever we are discussing, that's between two friends. So it can be more predictions, which may come true, which may not happen. Either what's coming for the immigrant community, what's coming in 2025?
Great question. No one knows. I don't have a crystal ball, but the thing is, we've been through this before during the first term. So we have a little bit of an insight as to some of the potential goals and things that might happen. I know during the first Trump term, we had the Muslim ban or the travel ban, where certain foreign nationals that were born in particular countries had these restrictions. That obviously went to the Supreme Court. They had to modify it. It was based on an executive order. But, there is a chance of that happening again in a more limited scope, which would, I don't know if you remember, they would call it extreme vetting. I think extreme vetting is coming back, or some kind of additional vetting for sure. But I also think, it's really hard to say. I don't know exactly. One thing I've been advising clients, like when I work with corporate clients, I've been advising them, let's do internal audits. Let's make sure our ducks are in a row. If you hire H-1B employees, you want to make sure all that paperwork you have, you're supposed to keep records. You want to make sure that's there in case there's a site visit or an audit, because that will increase. I think enforcement and audits could increase under the next administration. And I also think processing times could go up unless they plan to hire people. So there's some conflicting messages we have right now. In that they want to reduce, there's language signaling a reduction in federal government staffing, but at the same time, wanting to ramp up enforcement. So in order to ramp up enforcement, whether it's to do mass deportations or whatever is the goal, they need to hire more people. We just don't have enough federal agencies. There's not enough officers to do the work as it is. So I think there's going to be a lot of delays and backlog, which we already have. So those are just some of the more comfortable predictions, I guess, I could think of. But one thing I know about President Trump is he moves really fast. Like, I think that's something I remember and we always got to be ready for is I can't always predict the direction, but the speed is fast. He works through a lot of executive actions, executive orders, and then waits for them to kind of go up to through the courts and get to the Supreme Court. Ultimately, maybe it gets struck down as being improper, but like we still have to respond and react to it.
I see.
So,
Yeah. So you don't want to make any statements, bold statements, and you want to stay in a circle because I think there's still a lot of fear that starting next year, things may not go really well for the immigrants. And as you were saying, the special vetting process, you just can't show up because it's very clear that Trump wants to keep the jobs in U.S. itself for U.S. citizens. And it's very clear, again, this is my opinion, not your opinion, because I'm not a lawyer. I can say whatever I want to say. That's the safety I have, right? So let's talk about the Einstein visa, because I think when you and we were talking offline, I learned this is something from you. Then I spoke with a couple of my friends, and they are fully aware of Einstein visa. What is it, and how can somebody qualify for it?
Sure. So the Einstein visa, it's an immigrant visa, essentially green card. It's actually called the EB-1A. Colloquially, we refer to it as an Einstein visa, but it's a green card for individuals that have extraordinary ability in the arts, sciences, business, technology, whatever is their area of expertise. And so in order to get it, it's a green card based on merit, essentially. Most processes for green cards require a petitioner, like a U.S. company, to sponsor you. And the unique thing about the EB-1A is that you can self-petition. So you can sponsor yourself. It's based on your accolades and merit, whether it's memberships, awards, leading roles, patents, original contributions. Those are things that are part of the criteria to determine whether or not you're eligible for this type of green card.
Wait, so I came to this country on H-1 visa.
Mm-hmm.
Infosys was my employer and they brought me here. And the process was lengthy, but it's a very simple process. One thing which I did learn in India that to apply, to get selected for a H-1 visa, you have to have a bachelor's in engineering or technology. And this is where I forced myself to do mechanical engineering. But once again, what I forgot, I didn't know anything. So you're saying in this Einstein visa, you can sponsor yourself?
Yeah, so the H-1B is a work visa. The work visa version of this is the O-1A. It's a little bit different, but the Einstein visa, as it's called with respect to the EB-1A, the green card, you can work and petition yourself. Because what usually happens, which happens in similar situations, is you come in on an H-1B, like what you mentioned. You're working for a company on an H-1B. It's good for 3 years. They can renew it for another 3 years. It caps out at 6 unless you have a green card, like an I-140 a green card approval. So you're kind of trying to hope that the company does labor certification and does the whole process for you. But if there's layoffs or there's a change in employment, like it impacts your green card. So you're kind of always tied to the company, and it creates like a very stressful situation, especially for Indian foreign nationals, which I'm happy to chat about. I have a lot of thoughts on that. But what's nice about the EB-1A is you don't have to rely on an employer. There is not you don't have to do labor certification process and test the U.S. labor market, which is expensive, time consuming, and doesn't always work out. You just go on your merits and your accomplishments. So it has a different set of requirements, but I think it allows for freedom ultimately for foreign immigrants, especially entrepreneurs and people who are just really hardworking and talented.
Yeah, wait, why did you say especially for Indians, and you are happy to chat about it? I do want to know now.
Well, a large portion of my clients are Indian foreign nationals. And I think one of the things that like really riles me up, if you want to talk about politics, is the visa bulletin and the backlog for getting green cards for Indian immigrants. Like they are waiting so long. It is heartbreaking. And it's because of this per country cap that we have. Congress has this cap on the total number of green cards given to nationals of each country under each classification. So it's like about 7% of visas. And there happens to be a lot of Indian foreign nationals who are highly educated with master's degrees, bachelor's degrees. Those fall into the categories of green card that get backlogged. There's a limit. And so someone will come in on an H-1B visa, that's a work visa, they're working. They apply for the green card through their company. It gets approved, but they don't get the green card. They still got to wait another 10 years, 15 years because of this thing called the visa bulletin. And it's strictly because of their country of chargeability, India. It's really unfair. And it's something that I see. It's heartbreaking. There's these really talented engineers and people working at the big tech companies. They're sort of stuck there, or worried, because they really don't have that security of an actual permanent residency here.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually wanted to ask you this as a next question. Why does it take so long for green card to come? You get your EAD, and then after that, you just wait. But I didn't know that that's very specific to Indians. That's something, So either, let's say if you have to change something into this whole system, what unofficially, what can you change to fix it? Like, okay, let's talk about Doge for a second, right? So Doge is coming, a lot of innovations happening when it comes to government, energy efficiency, and many other things going to happen. We don't know yet because it's going to be interesting starting January next year. I wonder, as more talented people needs to be here, and I wonder if there's anything that may change in the immigration itself, that if you're already here, if you have a job, if you're making $1 million a year, for example, if you're working for NVIDIA or Apple or any other big company, or rather startup too, and because a lot of good startups, they do pay good money. So do you foresee that there may be a process that if you are very talented and you're also contributing a lot of money towards taxes, you may get exception? Or how can we fix this problem where you can get a green card faster if you already have a EAD or approval?
So those are a couple different points that you touched on. I think, one is just, there are actually options available. A lot of people don't think about it. They just think about the H-1B visa, but we've got the O-1 visa, we've got the TN, we've got the EB-1A, the Einstein green card option. We've got E-2s. It doesn't apply to India because they're not part of the treaty, but there's investment-based visas for other foreign nationals. But one of the biggest issues is honestly just how inefficient the government is in going through and processing these cases. I think digitization is really should be a big priority. It would make a huge difference. They've been working on, what's that?
Let's use blockchain.
The government's systems are so clunky and so outdated, and they've been piecemeal trying to update their systems for filing labor condition applications and all the, labor certifications and things for various parts of the immigration process. Because as an immigration attorney, what we do is we're actually working with multiple agencies. We're working with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for the most part. But also when you leave the States and you need to come in, you go through the consulates. We're working through the Department of State. When a company is hiring a foreign person, we also have to include the Department of Labor. And these agencies they all have slightly different systems. They don't all seamlessly work together. And even within each system, within USCIS, a lot of it is still paper filed. EB-1s, these Einstein visas, we're filing them with paper. They're one ream of paper thick of evidence. And just to be able to file online, to upload PDFs, this is something that's coming, but it's been so slow as a rollout. But I think if they were able to push that forward and streamline, it would, increase efficiency and certainly help.
So I know, what's the challenge? Do you think it's more they're worried that wrong information or false information may show up? Somebody may try to hack the system and try to get a green card. Why is it so slow?
I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of the federal government and their contracting. I know that they contract, though, with third parties, and their contracts change. And sometimes they get into these multi-year contracts with these other, the contractors that are building out their call centers or whatever, and they get stuck in these bad deals. They're making poor business decisions as well. They're just operating as a huge clunky entity. And of course, I do think there's a national security aspect to it. Certainly, I would be lying if I said just make everything online and make it easy. I mean, there's some thought that should go behind that because, as it seems, I think I was listening to an episode of a podcast the other day where they were talking about the hack into our phone systems, and that's something that was happening over a year ago before anyone even noticed it was happening. So certainly, immigration is similar. There's foreign agents that are trying to come to the U.S. on visas. It's rare, but it does exist. So there is a level of security that they have to think about. Certainly.
Yeah, I saw this news today. Starting 19th of January 2025, Apple and Android, they have to remove TikTok from their app stores. So no more TikTok. But I do want to talk about this a little bit more. How I know you do spend a lot of time in politics. You do read a lot, and I'm really weak in politics, and that's why I don't talk about it. And of course, I don't want to spend time on debating it. But I want to go back to Doge, not the coin. Doge. This whole system, immigration system. Do you see that Doge as a group may end up improving the overall process or red tape, or remove the red tape and make it more digital where things can move faster? Or you see that there's no impact of Doge at all on the immigration side?
So for changes to be made, a lot of it requires congressional approval or Congress to increase, like visa numbers are set by Congress. So the president can't be like, oh, we need more H-1B visas. It's a congressional act. Maybe they can try something with an executive order. But I just think that, and it's built that way so that changes are kind of slow so that we don't have these wild swings and instability in the country. With that said, there's certain things they could do. I mean, I think they could help implement policies that would be trends in how the government is deciding on things. What are they prioritizing in terms of adjudication and things like that? But I don't really know. I don't think Doge is an official agency, so I'm not sure how much. It's kind of we're all going to have to wait and see. No one really knows how it's going to play out. I'm watching with a curious and open mind. I try not to make any rash decisions on it. But, in terms of politics and the news as it pertains to what I do, I like to be informed. But honestly, sometimes I just like to wait. I want to see the law once it's passed, once that bill is passed, because there's a lot of proposals that are put out there, but they're not ultimately passed and put into law. So, we have a limited time. I can see the trends. But I sometimes think I don't want to invest in something until I understand that it's actually going to be law, because the number of proposals that come out are voluminous.
I see. So you don't want to spend your time and energy on speculation or just rumors. You want to focus more, which is more solidified, so that you can just, inform your clients. Let's change gears. So it's very clear we don't want to go too much details into our politics. I actually want to learn from you. How do you pick your clients? The reason I want to learn, because there is so much going on in immigration and complicated, simple cases. What does the life look like on your side? So,
my entire business is referral based. We don't do any advertising. To be honest, it's all referrals and word of mouth. I think my website is like a splash page, which is terrible, but it's just, I've been fortunate that I haven't really needed to do marketing and advertising. And I think it's because I'm very, very niche within immigration. And the types of clients and, my sweet spot is venture-backed startups, Series A, B, C levels, growing, very heavy on engineering team in terms of the importance of the product or business. So they're really working with quality engineers, top tier talent. It's a competitive industry. They're stealing from each other and stealing employees, and kind of trying to compete with the big guys because the startups are nimble and quick. So that's kind of where I come in. That's where I like to start. And then, we have also larger companies and some publicly traded companies as well. It's just that I love to see that trajectory of when it's the founders and then they're talking to me and it's there's just a tiny founding team and then all of a sudden they bring in the HR person and it just keeps growing. So it's all word of mouth. I do get a lot of clients from VCs and other investors. There's somebody in a portfolio company that, the rest of the members of the portfolio company maybe will come. It's honestly all word of mouth. I love working with hard sciences. So that's kind of the thing with the O1 visas and the Einstein visas. You could do them for arts, entertainment, all kinds of fields. My favorite is the STEM. I love science.
Yeah.
The nerdier, the better. I love working with the inventors and engineers. We've had a lot of AI, climate tech, ad tech. I'm always learning something new because it's whatever is so hot and up and coming and really emerging. That's kind of the things that we tend to grab, they tend to get funding and we also work with those types of clients. So it's always exciting.
Yeah. You know what? That was actually my next question when it comes to tech. And based on your experience, as you are spending so much time with so many immigrants, the technology wise, where the trend is right now and what's the easiest way to get a visa if you are really, really good in, let's say, AI or data or cloud? What's your take on it?
So in terms of like where is growing, I think we had a very busy couple of years with machine learning and AI. Like everyone was just machine learning, AI, but it just depends on what's trendy. But I think that's cooled off. Some of the funding is dried up, but now there's a resurgence coming now. I don't know where it's going exactly. But for the candidates, like the foreign nationals, like I think the most important thing is one of the challenges is a lot of very talented people, especially engineers, are working for large companies. Their contributions would sometimes make it a challenge for them to be able to do something like an Einstein visa or an O1 visa. So they're always stuck on the H1B path. It's not a bad path to be on, but you kind of want to have a plan B and C, right? So I think that's something important. It's like if you're trying to break out of that or have access to a potential green card more quickly, you want to learn how to qualify for something like an EB-1A. So that the EB-1A is a higher preference category than the EB-2 and 3, which are through employment. So if you're, for example, if you're an Indian national, you kind of cut out 10 years of waiting by getting an EB-1A for your green card. So it's worth it to invest in your career, development of your career and accolades, even while you're working at a big company, so that you have the option of trying for something like an EB-1A, and for certain people an NIW, just kind of depending on your situation. That's a national interest waiver green card.
What's your take on blockchain, quantum computing? Do you see people coming in and say, hey, I'm a blockchain or a crypto expert. Can I get a visa? Do you feel that? Okay, let me ask you this way. Immigration system, is it biased based on the more hyped technology versus like machine learning, for example, which is not very, hyped, sure, hyped in a way that a crypto bro comes in, says, hey, either I want a visa in US and here's my 1,000 Bitcoins. Is it easy for crypto bro to get a visa here?
I love this question. We've had crypto bros. It's been a while though. I think we had several cryptocurrency and fintech types of startups. But it was for several years ago. It's actually, I think public opinion soured on it a little bit, and now we'll see what happens. We still have some fintech companies and others, but the trends do affect immigration. So what I always think of is this. My job as the attorney is to present this candidate and tell the story, obviously in an ethical and accurate way, but I'm telling the story of like why this person is important and how they will contribute to America, to the United States. Like, why do we need them here? So my job is I'm going to highlight the pros: job creation, hiring Americans, helping our economy, making us more competitive against our foreign adversaries. Those are the things I want to focus on. So we highlight what's good, and maybe we don't highlight, or, we just kind of don't discuss the potential that might not be good. But depending on these officers, I always say, you want to explain the petition to, like, could be your aunt or uncle, they're not necessarily attorneys, the people who are reviewing these petitions. So you need to kind of simplify things so that they can understand it. They're not technical people either. Like, I'm not a technical person. So you need to simplify it and explain it in a way that's interesting and compelling. And yes, sometimes things fall in and out of favor. I mean, I think there was a time when, and I think we're kind of in it, or we were in it, where cryptocurrency or, people with strong backgrounds in crypto wasn't really like as cool anymore. It was cool, and then it wasn't cool, and now I don't know. Maybe it's cool again. We'll see.
Like those ICO days, remember 2018, 2019, so much, everybody was trying to launch their own token to make money out of it. So either imagine for a second, I'm a random guy sitting in India. I'm trying to get to US. What advice do you have for me?
Honestly, get an F1 visa. Get over here on a student visa, because it's really hard if you're a foreign person not living in the US to get a position with a US company without them having any exposure. So the way to do it is you got to come here on a student visa, network, get a nice degree. You get that OPT when you graduate. You get 1 year or sometimes longer sort of like internship time where you can work and you can kind of show your value, and you get your foot in the door. Hopefully they sponsor you for H-1Bs, whatever. If you're a little bit older into your career or a little bit more senior, then work for a company, maybe a company in India that has a US presence. You can transfer over the visa, or you have some, a company that has, sometimes they'll hire on through Upwork or contracting basis, like at least establish some type of working relationship, and then maybe they'll try you for an H-1B visa. Like that's the initial way to get your foot in the door. But, to stay and to have a secure future, it's going to be a little bit different planning. But I think that at least start considering this as like the initial steps.
I see. Now, let's say if somebody cannot afford F1 visa, so the only route is you get a job in India, have an employer, that employer sponsor your H1, and then you get lucky. I think during my days in early 2000s, 1999, I believe there was no lottery system, if I'm not wrong. The H1 lottery system is, how old is the system, the H1 lottery?
And, I don't know. 99, I wasn't practicing, but it hasn't always been there. But the lottery system, there's 65,000 visas available per fiscal year. That's not a lot. There's an additional 20,000 for U.S. master's degree graduates, which is why I say come to the U.S., study here, try to get your master's here. You get 2 shots of the lottery. You get to go into the 65,000 pool, and as well as the 20,000 MasterCap pool. Still not a lot because the competition is high. But that's why people are doing that. There are other ways. What I really like is the International Entrepreneur Parole. That's like kind of a new thing. I don't know if it'll still be here in the next couple of years. It's very underutilized, but like do a startup in India. India is robust. Like there's so much talent out there. So if you're over there, you start a company, you're successful, that's helpful to get you here. Start a branch in the US, or you can come on your own accolades like we discussed on one of these other options. But those are sort of the best ways, I think, to...
So I mean, again, this is my limited knowledge. So you're saying that if you have an amazing idea, and if you're launching a company in India, and I believe there may be some, minimum revenue requirement that you should hit that revenue or number of employees before you can apply to come to US and launch a company in US. That's another route you're saying. Is that correct?
I mean, there are different options, but there's not a set revenue number that you need to hit to come here on an Einstein visa or to do an E2 to expand. I mean, Indians are not eligible for E2s, but let's say an L1. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and like the hardest thing to unlearn or unteach people is it worked for your friend. They had this much revenue. These were their publications. This was like the number of citations they had. So it's going to work for you. And it's not. It's very dependent on each person. And I wouldn't want something like just a revenue figure to be like the basis of like, now I got the revenue, so I could come in. There's a lot of factors involved. But certainly if you're doing something that's potentially, it's innovative, you're going to help the US economy just as you've been helping your local economy, and you're getting recognition and awards for it. You've got maybe you have investors, maybe you don't. Like these are important factors that could help you in your journey to the US.
Nice. Got it. Ida, what's the best way to get hold of you? What's your cell phone number?
Honestly, okay, so my company is Landis Law. So you can go to our website, www.landuslaw.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn under Ida Ackland. I think
Reddit too, right?
Reddit? No.
Okay.
I should do that though. I love reading Reddit. So I'm on Quora as well, but I don't really message people on there. Yeah. I haven't been on Quora in a very long time. I do like answering questions on there for fun.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm glad we finally got to make it work.
Thank you for making time. This is fun.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Better You. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into today's topic and found some valuable insights to help you on your growth journey. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to leave us a review and share Better You with your friends. Together, let's continue exploring the exciting world of tech and business. Until next time, stay curious, stay innovative, and keep growing.